It's okay.
It's going to be amazing. Yes. It's going to be amazing.
That's probably enough drinks for tonight.
That's so cool. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing.
That's probably enough drinks for tonight.
Yeah. That's so cool.
It's okay. It's okay.
That's so cool.
That's probably enough drinks for tonight.
That's so cool.
It's okay.
Amazing.
It's okay.
Yes. That's so cool.
That's probably enough drinks for tonight.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Percona live stream. We are here with Ibar and Jobin today. I see that Jobin might be having a little bit of internet issue right now. It looks like the connectivity for him is a little wonky. So, Ibar, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, so hopefully Jobin will join back in a second. It looks like he's going to have some internet issues. Always when you're going to go do the live stream. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink him for now, and hopefully he'll be able to pop back up shortly. It looks like Evar, yours is holding a little stronger. So hopefully that works for us, and then when Jobin joins back, we can get right into it. So how have you been this week, Evar?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So this is our second live stream, second meetup. The first one was on MySQL. This one specifically on Postgres. We have a few topics to talk about. So looking forward to seeing if we get a few community folks to swing on by and say hi as well. So right now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide the chat until a few people start to chat there, and so that way we can get both of us in gloriously larger pictures, which is always great. And so if you don't know, if you haven't been here before, we're here to just talk about open source. We're talking about databases. We're talking about whatever pops up in terms of the community here. So we're excited to see what happens. So Ebar, we wanted to talk to you specifically. You mentioned about Postgres security as a topic that's pretty hot, and we can't turn around without seeing someone have a database that gets breached, data that gets left open. Somebody has issues with their security, and then we've got Jobin back as well. So Ebar, maybe tell us a little bit about how do we go about to secure our database environments?
SQL and the database security. That most of the people think about when they think about that is the database security. Mostly they are focusing on only the authentication. That if they secure their user, that's enough. Their data is secured. But that's not the case. You have to secure your whole database, not a one way. In a security, if you have a one breach, that means your database is not secure. So you have to secure your database in all means. Yeah, you have to store transmitting your data, you are querying your data, you have to secure your data. That's all you need to cater all the aspects. You need to secure your computer where your database is hosted. You need to secure your whole network, and you have to secure your applications too. Which application are using that database? If you have any loophole in one of the area, then your database is not secure, because if some captures your data from the network, then your database is not secure. It is responsibility of database to secure your data over the wire also, over the disk also. So you need to secure database at whole.
Yes, and I mean, I think that this is one of the things, and Jobin, thank you for joining us back. Just so everybody's aware, we are having a few network connectivity issues this morning, and this afternoon here, depending on where you are in the world. So hopefully that will keep up. But back to this discussion specifically on security. This is a lot about security in depth, isn't it? When we talk about securing a Postgres environment, you mentioned the different areas that you have to look at. And it's not just about a single user, but it really starts first just with that user and making sure that you've got strong password authentication, you've got the right sort of credential set, and then from there, once somebody's logged in, you have to make sure that the right roles and permissions for that user are set so they don't have overly broad permissions. And then from there, you have to worry about what they have access to. You have to make sure that if those are okay, that your systems are patched and you don't have any CVEs or vulnerabilities. So that's an issue. And then once your systems are patched, if someone gets onto the server itself, you need to make sure that they don't have the ability to, sniff packets, and see what kind of traffic is being transferred, that they don't have the ability to look at the data files directly. So you have to encrypt and rest. So it's about starting with the simple stuff and, working your way down, but it's not just the one thing, right?
Yes, it's just not the one thing. That's absolutely right. You have to secure your database in all means. And when I'm talking about the security, what I'm telling my most of the customer that first disable all the securities, all not securities. You just enable all the securities. Sorry, I just said the disable. Don't do that. I just enable all the
I
securities.
can't get in.
Yeah. Don't get it. Don't get it. Start losing some of information that if your user want to do something, then give him the access. Deny everything first, then allow him one by one. I heard that people are doing that, allow everything and just start denying some of the feature from the user. Don't do that. Just
Okay.
deny everything, and whenever there is a request that he can want to access something, just allow him.
Okay. So what kind of features does Postgres have to help us with the security side of things?
Yeah, and in security we have a triple A, right? Authentication, authorization, and accounting. And PostgreSQL has in authentication, PostgreSQL have three ways of authentication. The first, PostgreSQL have its own authentication system where you can PostgreSQL itself authenticate the user. The second authentication method PostgreSQL use is a OS authentication. That PostgreSQL will give the username and password to the operating system, and then operating system will authenticate that. Connect to the external server. So it will connect to external authentication server as the happen of any server. So you can connect that and authenticate from that. And that's the authentication point of view. That PostgreSQL has a good in authentication. In authorization, PostgreSQL have authorization that you can grant and revoke services from the user, and even you can also revoke some of the privileges from specific rows, not whole the table. Security. It's called row level security. So that's really cool feature actually. So when we are talking about the accounting, PostgreSQL have some accounting like you can PG stat statement, activity monitor. You can get that information. But the PostgreSQL, where the PostgreSQL is some kind of a weak in that, it's secure your data at rest. PostgreSQL don't have a table level encryption.
So there's no table level or field level encryption. You could do that in the application.
Field level encryption is there because there is a country module which is called PG crypto. You can crypt your column, but there is a no cluster level or table level encryption there in PostgreSQL. There has been discussion that people are submitting patches there in community that they want to have that in PG 15. Hopefully, that TD will be there in PG 15, but hopefully.
Okay. So we have our first question actually from Harry, who is, concerned because over the last 5 years, he's read on almost a weekly basis here about how data was stolen and breached. Are there some common sense policies or things we can do to make sure that our data is safe? And then he has a couple other questions, which we'll throw up here in a second.
Yeah. Actually, some common mistake of people are doing that. What they are doing giving the access of database access to the user. That's bad. You can give your application access the data, and you can only give the access to the people directly to the application. It called your database server is not publicly exposed. The first thing you have to be very careful. It should be within that VPN. that if you have a VPN where your one node, which is a database node, is totally hidden from outside the world, but your application, which is outside the VPN, attacker can attack your database server directly.
So, Ibar, we're having a little bit of connectivity issues here and there. So we're catching maybe every other word that you're saying at a couple things. But let me just try and rephrase. So I think that there's a couple things there that are important for us to get. And so, a couple people mentioned that your connection kind of dropped halfway through. So number one, you want to make sure that your database is not accessible, just publicly accessible. That is a huge thing. It's a huge vulnerability. There's generally not a reason, especially if you have an application in front of it, to leave your database out there, right? And so I think that is an important point that you were trying to make. I think one of the other things that you mentioned that is really, really important is not over giving permissions, right? So everyone should have a set of permissions, and they should have the minimal set of permissions that they need to get their job done. And so, making sure that you have limited those permissions is very, very important, because over permissioning people gives them the opportunity to do things that maybe, even if it's not malicious, they do by accident, right? Oh, I thought I was dropping a test database. I accidentally dropped production. True story. That actually happened to a very large company that I've worked with in the past, where we did some consulting with. They called us and, oops, our migration ran in the wrong place and dropped our production database. Not a good thing, right? And so having those permissions is critical as well. Jobin, what do you have some common things that you've seen as well from the security thing to common sense practices there? Oh, now we're not getting any sound out of Jobin. So a couple other things while Jobin works at his sound, and I apologize for the technical things this morning. So a few other things that we've found, and both of you can chime in here. Be sure to watch out for critical CVEs. Make sure that you're taking patch management very seriously. A lot of times people don't think about it because they set it, they forget it, and it's installed and it's running. But there are several CVEs that are popping up. Jobin, are you?
Yeah.
I hear Jobin now.
I'm back. Yeah. So one common mistake is everyone concentrate on the front door where the user privileges, all those things, but they forgets about the back doors. Say, for example, the backup might be happening to some file system. Maybe it's slightly old, but it may be kept open for vulnerabilities, that backup servers. So the encryption and the safety need to be across the board, from application server, database server, backup server, standbys. So the entire, unless entire system is secured, data can get exposed from anywhere. So just concentrating on the primary database user account won't really serve the purpose. Yeah, things can get go unnoticed.
And that's especially true. And we've seen there's a difference between database breach and data breaches. And it's a fine line, because a lot of times you see in the press that there is a data breach, and they talk about a MySQL or a Mongo or a Postgres or something, but it's not necessarily with a running system. It's with the backups. A lot of people, and I'm guessing that a lot of people who are going to watch this video probably running on like an AWS or an Azure or a Google Cloud, and they probably back up to something like S3. And, people put their backups in unprotected S3 buckets quite a bit. And that has caused some of the world's largest breaches.
Yeah.
Right. I think that is, something that is common, if you will, over and over again, that this happens. And so you got to be careful when you talk about that back door. Part of that back door is, where are you exposing that potential data? Another thing you mentioned, like the backup servers, copying data from production to test. How many people have taken a database and taken a dump of tables that have some sensitive information and upload it to their laptop, bring it home, lose the laptop, something like that. I mean, that happens.
Happens.
So, Ibar, you mentioned there is no encryption at rest. So for some of this, is that something that we're starting to see some work done on in the Postgres community?
Yes, I told you that since last 1 year, the community is working on that. There are some patches are there, the complete patches are there, but we are hoping to get it in PostgreSQL 15. Hoping to get it in PostgreSQL 15, but right now only column level encryption is there using PG Crypto.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a different take on that, because this is a common requirement to have a data at rest encryption, but the guidelines of data at rest doesn't clearly say whether that work need to be done by the database or the operating system or the storage. So this debate about the data at rest encryption is continuing for years. I think at least 4 or 5 years now we are discussing about this. But the community and especially the user community thinks that doing that at the database level has a lot more overhead than doing it something behind the scene. Especially when data need to be brought into the shared buffers, that also need to be encrypted, which need to be managed by the Postgres. So the encryption goes through all the layers, and the overhead gets too much that it may not worth implementing. But at the same time, it is very easy to push this down layers like operating system or storage. Nowadays, most of the SAN devices drives has encryption chips at the hardware level, and they do things almost as good as doing without encryption. The overhead is so minimal, even not noticeable. Yeah, so pushing the encryption overhead to the lower layers is something which we can generally advise. Like Ibrar said, it may come in upcoming versions, but I am still slightly pessimistic about that.
Well, we'll see, because I mean, I think everybody is concerned. Everybody has the concerns about performance, scalability, and security, right? So the big ones out there, and I think that we're seeing more and more of these happen. As Harry mentioned, he asked, why do we think this is happening, and was speculating, is this just because systems gotten that complex? And my answer to this is always, I don't think it's because systems have gotten too complex. I think that we've tried to make things too simple and easy for folks. I mean, as weird as that sounds, everybody wants, the easiest way, but they don't want to understand those potential configurations or potential areas that they do have to secure. If you look at those security breaches that happen, most of them aren't some, deep, hack that exists by someone exploiting some rogue code in the very back end. 90% of these tend to be something that someone just didn't set up properly.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think that's the critical thing there. Now, thanks everybody for the questions there on that. We've got another question from Paveen. So you can see it if you guys want. If my logical replication is broken, what's the workaround so that it will continue without dropping the subscription? Now that's an interesting one. So, Jobin, can you want to jump in here? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's known problem. The lack of continuity of logical replication. That's those patches were submitted a few years back, and it was rejected, just like our TD stuff. But because of not just because of for the rejection sake, but there are technical reasons behind that. And now, to best of my understanding, now some of the high availability solutions like Percona with the latest versions is addressing this problem. I am yet to test that, but at least I went through their documentation, and looks like they are solving this problem of failover of logical replication slot. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there is a solution, but it's only available in Petroni. Have you seen it elsewhere in other technologies or other extensions?
Not yet. There are a few workarounds. I published a blog post about the same problem, and one of the comment which I got was from a guy from Yandex, and he developed an extension. But with a certain ifs and buts, it works. It solves some of the problem, but it's not a widely accepted solution.
Yes, some of the
go
other
ahead.
companies has already fixed that problem, their own fork. And as far as I know, that Andres from the community has already submitted a patch in the community, but it's still not accepted by the community.
Okay. So this is an interesting question. Now, you mentioned, and I'm going to take this a little bit of a different direction. You mentioned like the extensions out there and how they could be potentially patching or solving them in a little bit different way. How often are you seeing these like extensions come out, they solve a specific problem, but they cause more problems than they solve? I mean, does that happen quite a bit? Like I've heard like, hey, if you're seeing some weird problems, you should probably start with looking at your extensions and start disabling them to see which one it is. Is that something that you see often?
So if you look at the extensions, there are extensions or the tools around Postgres which are widely used, or there are big community followers. Say, for example, PG Repack. It's a real hack into the Postgres to just like creating a duplicate table and swap the original table. It happens transparently, but it's a hack. But this extension is there around for so many years. It's one of the most popular. Even though it is little hacky, it is widely used and widely tested. So we don't have a problem in using it in production, because at least we know hundreds of people, companies using that. So that's validate the quality. Yeah, and since there are big community around, they'll validate everything. Say each and every code changes. The quality assured by the community. They monitor everything. Yeah, but that won't be the case with the extension which is not so popular or not. If there is not many users, and as you said, Postgres has so many extensions, thousands of them, and I remember there are extensions for even playing chess. Yes.
I've never played chess within the database. I mean, that could be something that is very popular with some people. I don't know, but it is something to think about, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, so Ibar, you've done a lot of extensions yourself, and I mean, I'm sure that it's kind of a mixed bag with what you've seen out there in the community space as well. Some better than others.
Yes, I have been working with the extensions quite a lot. Most important thing is everybody is making extension. If you just see the foreign data wrappers, I think hundreds of foreign data wrappers are there. So you need to trust only that extension which is widely adopted by the community. As you can see, some of the names from the community person. You have to only trust on that extension. And for other extension which is created by a single person and is unknown person, don't trust that extension.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's often like, there's so many, it can be overwhelming. I think at one point I went out to GitHub and like the number of Postgres related projects numbered like over 100,000. So, figuring out which one actually, will work and which one is, abandonware, it's a problem in and of itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I saw Paveen mention that he felt that Petroni wasn't a good solution. Paveen, I would totally encourage you to jump onto our Discord. You can chat with our folks there as well if we want to get deeper into specifically that particular issue and what we might be able to do, and maybe have some discussions with some of our engineering staff on potential fixes within the Postgres community. Harry wants to know if there's a generic checklist for PostgreSQL DBAs on security. I believe we do have a blog on Security Practices 101 somewhere. I think that Robert might have written it. I'll have to look. But do either of you know, do we have like a blog or a checklist for like, these are the security kind of things you should do in Postgres?
I think, Avi and we together published some blog post on.
Yeah, I think we do. I'm looking right now. Let's see if I can find something. Yeah, we do. PostgreSQL database security published this year. Yep, I thought I saw that. No, actually, there's an Ibar. Ibar, you published something. So I did find something that you published.
I published.
Oh, and Ibar's frozen again. Sorry.
I have published many security blogs on authentication and different types of security, but not exactly checklist, right?
Not exactly a checklist. Okay. Yeah, I swear that I saw a checklist on our website here.
Yeah, it's from Ben here. Yeah, I got the blog.
Yeah. And let's see. So, yeah, and I mean, there's a few older ones as well. So we can drop a few in the chat here for folks if they're interested. That one's a pretty good one. And we've got the one from January here that I also did. And there is there are a couple of Percona live videos as well out on YouTube from different speakers from outside of the Postgres space, or outside of the Percona space as well. So I noticed like there was some Amazon, there was some other folks as well. So I think there's quite a few resources, but I would encourage you, Harry, to check on a couple of those. So there you go. Paveen is a big fan of PG Repack, by the way. So shout out to PG Repack for everyone. Right. And Ibar sent me another one. So here's another one that's a good one. Oh, yeah, here's the PostgreSQL missteps and tips. Thank you. Thank you for that. There's another one of those for you who are watching. And when you go back to do the replay, those should still show up in the comments. So you should be able to get those and check those out at a later date and time as well.
Yeah,
that's great.
You can also search in the YouTube. My name Ibrahim Ahmed. I have also presented in some conference about the security tips and tricks.
Yep. So Harry, hopefully that sets you in the right path. Feel free, if you don't or need some more, jump onto our Discord. I'm on there. You can ping me if Ibar or Jobin aren't around, and we can chat and find you what you need to get you some help. So happy to have that as well. So another question. There is some white papers also published by EDB as well. Yep, there's lots of references out there for security. So definitely everybody has a little bit of a story there, and I'm sure we can help you find ones that are relevant to you. So we've kind of talked a little bit about some of the other topics we've had on security. We've answered a couple questions, talked a little bit about a few things, but the other thing we wanted to talk about was we've seen this massive growth in the Postgres space this year. And Jobin, this was a topic you wanted to talk a little bit about. We've seen that Stack Overflow has, the fastest growing database is Postgres. The most wanted database is Postgres. The most loved, I think Postgres is number 2 behind Redis. I think they're almost like equal though, right? So tell us why you think that is. What's going on here? Why is all of a sudden it's actually not even all of a sudden. You look at the last 5 years, every year Postgres just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's all started from this time. It is around 2013 September. Then that was the big bang of Postgres, and then after that, say the this graph, you're able to see my screen, right?
Yep. We zoomed in a little bit,
yeah.
so we lost the chat, but we can definitely
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, so after that, the graph looks almost straight line, but actually it's not straight line because the y-axis is a logarithmic scale. So this straight line is actually a exponential curve. So from 2013 onwards, there is no go back. We are on steady progress, capturing more and more users. User base is increasing, and that is visible not only in just on the surveys, even on Postgres conferences. Earlier, very few people used to attend the conferences. Now the Postgres conferences are a big event. So yeah, the community is growing. Yeah, so like you said, for many years, even decade, the project was not on that limelight. Yeah, so but from 2013, yeah, things are totally different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a big difference, right? So, we've seen that growth continue to just escalate and grow. A lot of it. How do you think that, and I'm going to go ahead and unshare your screen for now, so we can see your face again. Let me know if you want to reshare it. And we do have a comment that I'll get to in a second. Every time I turn the chat off, the comments don't reappear on screen. So they're there, and I can see them, and I can show each individual one, but you don't get the log of them. So. We'll leave the chat up in case someone wants to jump in on this topic. But Paveen, I did see your comment, and we'll get back to it in a second. So, a couple things. We've seen this growth at the same time when we've seen proprietary database growth kind of shrink. And so, we've often seen that the Oracle kind of, going down correlates a lot to Postgres going up, because a lot of those refugees from a Oracle environment like to look at the feature set and the value that Postgres provides. How much of this do you think is driven by people fleeing like Oracle or maybe DB2 or SQL Server?
A big chunk of users coming to Postgres are from Oracle background. Yeah, because for many years, maybe decades, Oracle was ruling the database world, especially inside enterprises. They have huge user base. And now there are multiple pressing requirements for them to go out of that cage. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always like part of this, right? Is that migration, but I also think that I also think that a lot of people have found that Postgres being so open has enabled a lot of companies, cloud providers, third-party companies to adopt Postgres and develop services, develop features, develop entire applications using it without having to worry about funny licensing or other crazy things.
Yeah, you have very very important point. The cloud providers, they are making a big impact in Postgres community, and because Postgres community as such won't market because it's open source. You use it or if you like it, but that's not the case with the cloud companies. So when they look at the customers, they look for opportunity to move them to cloud, to their open source database hosting, and they do a lot of marketing about that. That's really driving, and they do invest in Postgres by contributing as well. There is a graph which is very small to read, but there is AWS, Google, and Microsoft. They are contributing in a big way. Yeah, so all the cloud companies are contributing to open source, and they're really solving tough challenges. Yeah.
Okay. I think. Yeah, I think that it's important to realize that a lot of adoption is really about how much we've been able to make it easier for users to get access, feel that they can get, quality software where they need it. And so just enabling that entire, ecosystem to not only be able to download and use it themselves, but have those options for the as a service, I think has really spurned a lot of growth. Now,
Yeah.
we did have a couple of, go ahead.
Yeah, so now the Postgres, the software is more or less like a database kernel. It's the center of the centerpiece, and we have a lot of things around that. Maybe sometimes even bigger than Postgres. At least few years back, when somebody used to ask me whether PostGIS community is bigger or Postgres community is bigger, I used to get a doubt whether they are bigger or Postgres, because those user base is so big. And we know many enterprise users adopted Postgres because we have PostGIS extension, because GIS community is behind that. Yeah. So now I don't have that doubt. Definitely Postgres is bigger. Postgres community is bigger. Yeah, but and that is the case with many other solutions as well. As a Postgres kernel don't have the ability to shard. So, but we have extensions created which will enable this kernel to have a sharding capability. The Citus data extension. Citus is acquired by Microsoft, but yeah, they are still continuing the development. It's a wonderful extension. Yeah, okay. So the kernel become a totally different beast once we have those extensions enabled. So yeah, just like Linux, as I say, this is a database kernel. That's a operating system kernel.
So we got another question from the community out there. Praveen again is very active today in the chat. We appreciate you hanging out there with us, asking us some questions. When can we expect multi-master replication in the native community PostgreSQL? Do we have this? Is this on the roadmap? Oh, like you're just saying nope.
Never.
Why
Even
not?
I will
why won't
object.
it happen? Tell us why it won't happen.
Yeah. So because I don't see the multi-master as such is not solving any problem. So first of all, look at the multi-master environments, the solutions we have. Say if we have two masters, for example, if we want to have a multi-master, either we need to have a shared disk, which is what Oracle does, which is a shared disk cluster. The Oracle Rack is a shared disk cluster. So actually, it's not multi-master; it's only one disk. Database is nothing but what you stored. It's only a single place it is stored. And the multiple instances there, they are mapped to the single storage. And other solutions where we have nothing shared architecture are actually there are multiple storages, but the data gets copied from one machine to another. So basically, every node does the same thing what the master is doing. So because the data need to be replicated to another storage. So if you have shared disk storage, it's a single database anyway. But if you have multi-master, a multi-node copying the data, it is not scalable because it need to do every node need to do the job of all other nodes.
But is that true? So let me throw this out there, right? So yeah. you look at some of the new SQL solutions, if you will, right? Where you've got like a sharded work set, and you're talking about sharding. Both of you're going to have multiple shard, sets, and you're going to have multiple, quote unquote, primaries, where they're accepting, writes from different components, and you load balance them. It's not quite the same as a multi-primary setup, right? Where you've got multiple, connections being able to write to just any one, because what you're doing is you're saying, oh, you're writing to the shard set, and that could be on 3 servers, and then you could have 3 other servers with a different shard set. But I think that's becoming more common, right? Which is a little bit what Citus does, right? It's a little bit like Citus, the Citus extension.
Yeah, you are correct. The sharding is a solution. Sharding really solves problem. And if you look at closely, everything which scales up is ultimately a sharding solution. Even if you closely look at the big data solutions like Hadoop, the underlying architecture is pretty much it's a shard. The sharding solutions really solves the problem, but not multi-master. That's not multi-master. Yeah.
Ibar, what like you also were like very never we're never going to do it. What like why were you like that? Like I heard Jobin what Jobin said, but I want to hear what the reason why you were so negative on a multi-master.
If you are focusing on multi-master application, then it will make your life more complex than easier. You can easily design your database without multi-master application. If you design your database to use a multi-master application, and in my opinion, most of the people who are asking multi-master application are coming from the Oracle background. They are very used to have multi-master application in Oracle. They now want to switch to PostgreSQL. But in my opinion, if they design their code project without multi-master application, it's much better than multi-master application because it will make your life more complex.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we
So
got another
just
question.
want to.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Before I go
Sorry
to the
for
next
cutting.
question.
Yeah. Just to add to the Ibrar's point, many of the multi-master solutions were designed on pre-cap theorem age. Say, the cap theorem, and you mentioned about the NoSQL solutions. They are able to scale better because they look for eventual consistency, and that's a real solution. That's a real solution, and it solves the problem. But many of the existing multi-master solutions are designed and developed on an age where there was no knowledge of cap theorem properly. And what really it ended up is more outages. So interestingly, personally, I have done a survey because I was working for a big organization. I noted down all the outages and plotted a graph. For years, I noted what really caused the outage. So the multi-master solution which the vendor supplied, those machines tend to cause more outage and more incidents because there are more failure points. Nowadays, we count the single point of failures. So if there is a single point of failure, we can't call it anymore a high availability multi-master cluster anymore. So for example, if there is a voting disk or a quorum solution, or if there is an interconnect which need to heartbeat each other, so all these things become failure points. And if there are single point of failures, then things goes against our expectation. Overall, at the higher level, we may feel that this is a high availability solution, but if you really count the numbers, those solutions will end up in more outages in real numbers. Just count the numbers, we'll see. And I have done that exercise personally. And why I done is because of the cap theorem, because I want to look at whether this cap theorem is really true in reality.
Yeah. And so so there's a little bit of so Kishore had a question, but there was a couple follow-ups specifically on this. So Paveen had actually we'll show what Paveen said. He does come from the pure Postgres background, but he's impressed by the shared nothing architecture like a Cassandra, which again Cassandra is a eventual consistency, right? So you're making some trade-offs there. So I think that's an important thing to consider as well. So something to just be mindful of. We've also got, a comment on what do we suggest instead of multi-master. And I think we might have covered that a little bit here, which when we were talking about what to use instead of multi-master, there are sharded systems. So sharding is a reasonable approach, whether it's with Citus data or something else. We've also got some, other options. Anybody want to say any of the other options that, you might consider over a multi-master?
Yeah. So we need to concentrate on the problem first. Okay. So multi-master is proposed as a solution. So don't go and pick the solution first. Let us concentrate on the problem. Are we looking for high availability? then choose a solution which solves all the single point of failures. Okay, that we have. Percona is wonderful on that. And if you are planning for scalability, that's a problem. Scalability is a problem, and the solution is sharding or the even read replicas. So look at the problem first, then the solution. So we have solution for everything, but we don't have a specific answer for specific. So which do exist in the other systems, because we are not concentrating on the solutions. We are concentrating on the problems.
Yeah, and there's an interesting point here from Paveen, who jumped back in. And mentioned like the Cassandra, is running Netflix at a scalable, side, and that's absolutely true. Like, so, and here's the thing, right? So there are all kinds of different database technologies and all kinds of different database engines out there. There's, I mentioned some of the new SQL. You're hearing quite a bit about Cockroach. You're hearing quite a bit about Yugabyte. You're hearing quite a bit about, PingCap's TiDB. All of them take that, cloud native scalable approach, but they're built from the ground up to be able to have some of those trade-offs in the back end. They take the Postgres protocol, both Cockroach and Yugabyte, and they implement it over their own, kind of back end storage and their back end database infrastructure, which is, it's a little different. It's still, it's the quote unquote compatible way, so it should work. But there are trade-offs in application design when you're looking at that sharded system or how you're setting things up. One of the things that, and I'm going to go really old school for everybody, and I'm going to go outside the Postgres community for a second. Bear with me. I know you guys hate it when I go to another database, but I'm going to bring up NDB cluster from MySQL. Okay. So if you're not familiar with NDB cluster from MySQL, it is ancient. It's been around forever. I mean, I was, doing stuff years and years and years and years ago. But basically NDB clusters structure is very similar to a lot of these sharded databases, where each node would get a portion of the data, and then you would have replica sets where, you've got two replicas, both have that portion of the data, the sharded data. And so it was insanely fast and scalable for the workloads it was good at. And the problem is, once you start to get outside of those workloads, then you have to make application design decisions, and you have to change how you're accessing those databases, because the same things that you expect to just work out of the box, out of a Postgres or a MySQL or one of these other relational databases, don't always work the same way, because your data isn't all on one server. It's not aggregated. It could be across dozens or hundreds of servers, and then it needs to be filtered back, and then it needs to be aggregated over and over again until you get your result. So, a lot of work has been done to make those better in this modern generation of the new SQL, applications, but it is something that hasn't been completely solved. And the people that I've talked to from, who use, some of these new technologies, and they're awesome. Trust me, I've seen them. They're spectacularly awesome at what they can do and the scale that they can achieve. It's just that they say, look, you can't lift and shift. You're not going to take what's working today on Postgres and just drop it in over here and just expect it to work 100%, because you're going to see that things that worked well before might not work so well. So you're going to have to, make some changes. And I think that's an important thing to note. So, I wanted to pull that out. So a couple other things, we did get this question from Kishore. We were talking about extensions a little earlier, and my face is down here. I can't really see me. I'm kind of below the comment. So hopefully, there we go. So Kishore asked, what are the common extensions that most Postgres solutions deployed with? Is there, if there's 100,000 of them, how do you determine which ones are safe and vetted by the community? So is there a list somewhere of like, these are the most popular extensions and these are the ones that we would recommend?
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Ibrahim, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So there are some list of extension you can use that are shipped with the PostgreSQL country module. These are the most trusted extension because it is developed by the community. So you can trust them. I think it's 50 to 55 extension are there in country module PostgreSQL. It's not installed by default. You have to install that extension. And one of them, the common name are PG stat statement, PostgreSQL FTW, these kind of extension are there. You can use that. And other than that, some other extensions are there. But whenever you want to use some extension, you need to make sure there are some people from community are working on there, because or some big companies are also behind that. Like Percona have their own extension PG Stat Monitor. It's Percona is also supporting that they have a big company named Percona behind that extension. Like Crunchy Data, like Enterprise DB, like second quadrant, oh no, not second quadrant right now, but
So, so Ibar,
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
breaking up a little bit there, but I think like just to
Yeah.
recap for those who might have not caught all of that. So I think that the number one thing is, use the extensions that are shipped with Postgres that are
Postgres.
available in the official, packages. If you're looking at other
sorry,
extensions,
not packages, Matt. They are not packaging all the extensions. You need to install that using PGXN.
Oh,
also.
okay. So so things are in the that's fine. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. But also look for who has developed it and who's supporting it and what sort of support you can get. If there's commercial offerings, if there's companies that are well established in the database space, it's going to have a higher level of quality because there's an engineering, team behind it. If it's a product that companies want, that they're designing, it's another good one to look into. But be careful of those that you don't recognize names, you don't understand what's there unless there's a very specific need.
Yeah.
Jobin?
Yeah. So you're correct. So the extensions which comes along with the Postgres as packed differently in different operating systems. For example, in Red Hat and CentOS, it will be a separate contrib packages RPM, but it's part of Postgres ecosystem, as Ibrar mentioned. It's developed and tested properly in the community. So whether we install the same contrib modules from the RPM packages or the source is not important, but one thing it assures is that it is widely used and widely installed. So those extensions we don't have any hesitation to use. Yeah, but as Matt, you mentioned, the popularity of the extension is key for other extensions. One trick I used to play is I look at the GitHub star rating. So whenever people like certain project, they'll click on the star. So because that's a good indication that how popular is the project is. So for example, Petroni.
Don't run things in production that have 0 stars and that were just released. That's good common sense advice. Like I just uploaded the first version 1's out there, right? Don't do that. We seem to have lost Jobin. Internet flakiness, the gremlins are back. But Paveen had another question here. Is failover and failback using logical replication? Is it possible? Just like streaming replication. Ibar, can you answer that? Because Jobin is.
I don't think so. I don't think
so.
Okay. Possible. Yeah, I don't think so. It's possible. Maybe
Okay.
Jobin can more comments on that, but in my opinion, it's not possible.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're about at our time, anyways. So thank you for the questions, everyone. We do appreciate you hanging out with us for the hour here. We hope you found this valuable. Want to thank Ibar and Jobin for stopping by and hanging out with us for an hour, just talking different questions, seeing what's out there. A lot of topics we didn't get to that I would have liked to discuss. So, in another month, we'll bring on some more folks. We'll have some more discussions around Postgres. We'll see how it goes. And hopefully you enjoyed this. And if you want to talk on this, you want to come out and chat back and forth, let me know. Hit us up on Discord, and we'd be happy to set up something and have you tell us what kind of cool things you're doing. So thank you everybody for hanging out with us.
Thank you.